When individuals embark upon journeys for leisure or exploration purposes, the majority gravitate toward renowned destinations and heavily frequented urban centers or nations. However, limited awareness exists regarding our planet's numerous locations that possess equally compelling characteristics. Greetings, where today's exploration will illuminate various geographical sites enveloped in enigma and supernatural phenomena. We encourage audience engagement through video evaluations and, naturally, commentary regarding your perspectives on the presented material. Sacred Peak of Kailash. Positioned within Tibet's Western Valley expanses under Chinese territorial jurisdiction rises Mount Kailash, globally acknowledged as Earth's most perplexing and mysterious geographical landmark. Across the theological frameworks of major world religious systems, this towering geological formation maintains significant spiritual reverence. Traditional indigenous belief systems characterize Kailash as a mountain endowed with otherworldly attributes. Specific spiritual doctrines assert that during intervals when the summit becomes concealed by atmospheric cloud formations, extraordinary luminescent manifestations occur, within which witnesses report observing multi-appendaged supernatural beings. Hindu theological interpretation identifies this manifestation as Shiva, representing one of their pantheon's most venerated divine entities. Buddhist religious understanding establishes Buddha's residence upon this mountain's terrain, whereas advocates of paranormal investigations propose that Kailash constitutes a massive prehistoric pyramidal structure erected by an extraordinarily advanced prehistoric civilization. This exact geographical location served as explorer Nikolai Rurich's operational base during his quest for the legendary realm of Shambhala. The mountain's southern facade exhibits a pronounced vertical geological fracture intersected by a horizontal crack pattern. From particular observation angles, this natural configuration demonstrates similarity to the swastika emblem. Consequently, Kailash periodically receives identification as the Swastika Mountain. Documentary evidence indicates that merely 2 to 3 individuals have accomplished successful summit conquest of Kailash's peak elevation. All subsequent mountaineering endeavors have terminated in disastrous consequences and failed outcomes. Geological institutions provide official records demonstrating the mountain's emergence from oceanic depths transpired approximately 20,000 years previously, while the encompassing valley topography developed through geological mechanisms spanning approximately 5 million years. The phenomenon that continues perplexing scientific investigators involves the mountain's distinctly pyramidal geometric structure, coupled with the extraordinarily precise orientation of its faces toward the 4 cardinal directional points: northern, southern, eastern, and western alignments. Mount Kailash exhibits consistent association with the numerical sequence 6666, encompassing the mountain's altitude measurement, calculated distance to Stonehenge, and measured distance extending toward the North Pole. Karla Cave Complex. 30 kilometers distant from Lonavala city in India exists the modest village of Karla. This represents a conventional settlement that would fail to attract attention except for the extraordinary cave system positioned in its vicinity. Contemporary scientific understanding attributes these cave constructions to Buddhist monastic communities during the initial centuries of the Common Era. Nevertheless, no conclusive explanation exists regarding their construction methodology. These cave formations demonstrate remarkable characteristics, featuring extraordinary entrances, precisely processed and uniform wall surfaces. Additionally, countless figurines and elaborate decorative patterns appear throughout the entire complex. Official documentation indicates these cave structures sustained considerable damage during the 20th century, resulting from significant seismic activity. The interior spaces contain completely vacant chambers, displaying exclusively various ornamental elements carved into the cave wall surfaces. Essentially, entities created these chambers and processed them thoroughly, yet no artifacts were discovered within. The majority of research specialists maintain that utilizing implements available to populations 2,000 years ago, constructing such elaborate structures would have been physically impossible. The columned archways and sculptural works within these 16 cave formations inspire profound admiration and astonishment. Official recognition designates this location as an ancient Buddhist temple complex. Heizgaga Valley, Black Bamboo Valley. Heizgaga, alternatively designated as the Black Bamboo Valley within China, ranks among the planet's 5 most hazardous and mysterious geographical zones. Throughout the preceding 50 years, over 100 individuals have vanished en masse within this territory. Across an area spanning 180 square kilometers, dense bamboo vegetation flourishes, achieving heights of 40 meters. The valley frequently experiences dense atmospheric fog due to its depressed topographical position. The region additionally contains marshland areas, cascading waterfalls, and massive lakes measuring 200 meters in diameter. Despite the area's natural magnificence, this location has acquired an extremely negative reputation due to sequential mysterious disappearances. Specifically documented are lost exploration parties and missing research teams across various time periods. Argentine geophysicist and ufology researcher Charles Olash provided comprehensive documentation of this anomalous zone within his published work, characterizing it as a location where abnormal occurrences manifest, impacting individuals from diverse belief systems. Notwithstanding these circumstances, during the 21st century, the valley continues attracting tourist populations and souvenir commerce operations flourish here. Significantly, no comprehensive scientific investigations have been conducted regarding this location, and available information maintains a mythological character. Oxai Underground Network. The subterranean passage system positioned in Rostov's suburban areas within Oxai City constitutes an extremely mysterious and mystical location. This tunnel network, extending across numerous kilometers, possesses a collective length exceeding 100 kilometers. Speculation exists regarding an ancient underground passage system subsequently reconstructed into military catacombs, clandestine laboratories, and command facilities. Previously, local inhabitants detected underground detonations. However, the headquarters facility has been permanently closed, and portions of the passages have been sealed or demolished. Documentation exists suggesting underground discoveries prompted these actions. Despite these circumstances, limited tunnel sections remain accessible for visitation, consequently attracting inquisitive researchers. The Death Valley, Yakutia region. The Death Valley, positioned along the Vilyui River within Yakutia, bears designation as the Valley of Death. This location became a research focus during the previous century when investigator MYSTICIZM documented local legendary accounts. According to these traditional narratives, massive copper cauldrons exist along the riverbanks, with primary portions remaining concealed underground while minor sections protrude from the soil surface. Legends additionally claim that beneath the protruding sections exist numerous metallic chambers where comfortable temperatures persist even during extreme cold periods. Certain individuals remained within these chambers and subsequently perished. References also describe smooth metallic hemispheres protruding from permafrost surfaces sufficiently to permit sledding activities. Local legendary accounts also identify the causative factors behind these mysterious phenomena. Assertions indicate a creature designated Oot Usuma Tongtuarai inhabits the area. This terminology translates as criminal extraterrestrial entity that penetrated the earth and concealed itself in the depths, obliterating surroundings through fiery destruction. Legends additionally reference fire emanating from metallic pipes covered by slamming covers, along with iron corridors extending underground. These mysterious occurrences intensify interest levels, particularly since the descriptions preceded the establishment of military installations containing missile launch facilities. Kitez phenomenon. Along the Volga River near the Ziguli Mountains, extraordinary mirages occasionally manifest, documented by Leopold during the previous century in his publication, Observations of the Samara Territory. Among these mirages appears the city of Kitez, alternatively termed the Peaceful City, which according to legend represents the primary palace along the gentle Volga, surrounded by tower structures. This urban apparition manifests as an extraordinarily brilliant and distinct mirage, observable along water body shorelines, cliff edges, or hillside slopes. Traditional accounts assert that the gentle Volga safeguards accumulated treasures within the peaceful city. These mirage phenomena have been documented in this region for extensive periods, with the initial recorded mirage occurrence dating to the 1960s. Certain researchers proposed that mirages might correlate with ancient mechanism operations, although these hypotheses remain unsubstantiated. Beyond the peaceful city, luminous objects including spherical formations and false solar appearances are documented. Spherical objects appear as groupings of 4 large, brilliant spheres accompanied by one small mobile unit. Multiple sources indicate these spheres appear most frequently south of Samara City. Such phenomena, despite regular observations, unfortunately remain unexplained to the present day. They stimulate intense debates and theoretical discussions regarding their origins. Abu Ghorab Temple Complex, Egypt. Within Egypt exists a genuinely extraordinary structure constructed by 5th dynasty pharaoh Nusair, and despite its current deteriorated condition, it maintains recognition as the Old Kingdom's best-preserved temple complex. Beyond housing among the earliest obelisks, presumably reaching 70 meters in height, Abu Ghorab contains a distinctive alabaster altar and numerous enigmatic bowl artifacts. The authentic purpose and functionality of these objects has confounded researchers across centuries. This investigation remains unresolved presently, establishing Abu Ghorab as genuinely mysterious territory. The location contains enormous massive red granite blocks weighing multiple tons individually. Remarkably, these possess extraordinary characteristics, precise cutting techniques, exceptionally polished surfaces, and most significantly, these massive blocks were positioned with incredible accuracy, resembling pyramid-facing stone installations. Although we cannot conceptualize the magnificence this location possessed upon completion thousands of years ago, the remaining evidence suggests catastrophic events possibly occurred there in ancient times. Ancient Carnuntum Arch, Austria. Prevailing belief indicates the city's construction during Roman Emperor Constantius II's reign, spanning 350 to 361 AD, though this represents conjecture. Ancient Romans occasionally erected similar structures commemorating significant military victory locations. This interpretation possesses validity since the ancient city of Carnuntum previously existed at this position. While the settlement no longer exists, one arch from that era persists. Across several centuries, misinterpretation occurred, describing it as gates to the ancient city. However, since minimal information exists regarding its authentic history, only legends and mythological accounts surround it, making this location popular among pagan gatherings who designate this arch as Paradise Gates. If this truly represented a Roman tetrapylon, some emperor or deity statue would probably exist on this territory. Yet at this location, besides the arch, nothing remains. Massive footprint impressions at Ain Dara Temple, Syria. Our ancestors' conviction that superhuman entities of gigantic proportions once traversed the earth appears repeatedly throughout ancient mythological and legendary accounts. A colossal footprint impressed into granite and discovered in Syria convinced many that giants genuinely inhabited the world previously. Ordinary populations regarded them as deities and provided worship. The magnificent Ain Dara Temple, or its surviving remnants, initially attracted attention in 1955 when a monumental basalt lion was accidentally discovered within its boundaries. Subsequently, the temple underwent complete excavation between 1980 and 1985. This temple frequently receives comparison to King Solomon's temple. Numerous scientists observed that similarities between the Ain Dara Temple and the biblically described temple are genuinely remarkable. Both structures were constructed upon massive artificial platforms built at their city's highest elevations. According to archaeologist Ali Abu Asaf, Ain Dara operated for 550 years. Archaeologists cannot reach consensus regarding this temple's dedicatory purpose. Some believe it honored Ishtar, the fertility goddess. Others propose that this sanctuary belonged to goddess Astarte. Nevertheless, another group suggests the temple's ownership probably belonged to god Balhadad. At the Ain Dara temple's threshold exists a pair of carved gigantic footprint impressions. They measure approximately 1 meter in length and face toward the temple interior. An inner courtyard constructed with stone slabs also approached this location. The slab contained a carved left footprint, indicating divine temple entry. The right footprint was carved on the threshold, suggesting the gigantic deity required merely 2 steps for interior access. These colossal footprint impressions remain an unresolved mystery presently. Scientists cannot determine their carving purpose and intended functionality. Certain scientists proposed that footprint impressions could have been created for divine presence reminders, resembling iconic divine representations. Coquilco Pyramid Complex, Mexico. The temple pyramid occupies the central area of what constitutes the Valley of Mexico's oldest city. Construction was accomplished by a civilization that remains mysterious presently. Evidence suggests Coquilco emerged as an early agricultural settlement approximately 1,200 to 800 BC. Expanding population and cultural developments led to this Great Pyramid's construction, along with additional smaller pyramids and residential structures. Although Coquilco culture remains enigmatic, numerous artifacts discovered during archaeological excavations demonstrate this represented an exceptionally advanced civilization. Religious practices centered around worshipping an ancient deity designated as the Old Fire God. Ironically, fire probably caused this civilization's dramatic decline. Archaeologists believe survivors escaped, abandoning ruined Coquilco, and established alternative communities in remote Valley of Mexico regions. The Kalahari Lost City Mystery. Historical accounts indicate that somewhere within southern Africa's Kalahari Desert exists a lost city shrouded in significant mystery. Guillermo Farini attempted the initial mystery resolution in 1885. He authored a book detailing unusual rock formations, interpreting them as previously unknown building ruins. During the 20th century's beginning, his observations established the foundation for legend dissemination throughout South Africa. Certain individuals claimed observing abandoned boats or quarries within the empty desert. Others attempted explaining this unknown civilization's presence through comparisons with Great Zimbabwe archaeological discoveries. Since 1932, over 25 expeditions have been conducted searching for the lost city, all proving unsuccessful. Nevertheless, scientists continue their discovery attempts. Druid's Temple, Ilton, Great Britain. What appears on your screens represents a path terminating in a low clearing, where a massive oval of standing dark stones rises, over which centuries have passed. The center contains roughly hewn boulder formations. Perhaps some ancient roof once covered the circle? Did wild bearded pagans conduct sacrifices upon these stones? Numerous questions exist, however this Druid's temple actually represents a modern architectural folly. Constructed during the 1820s by William Danby's directive, the eccentric Ilton estate owner. As an innovative solution for local unemployment issues, he decided compensating workers 1 shilling daily for stone collection to create his personal miniature Stonehenge. Upon building completion, Danby established a new challenge, offering substantial rewards for whoever would inhabit this location for 7 years as a hermit. This trial proved beyond anyone's capabilities. The individual who endured longest lasted 4.5 years. One day he vanished without trace and was never located. Scientists cannot determine this location's construction purpose and the final servant's disappearance. Devil's Hole. When something receives naming after Hell's ruler, expect strange and unsettling phenomena. Devil's Hole fulfills its designation. This represents a Nevada geological formation consisting of multiple caves and a bottom lake. No one determines its depth. However, this location possesses additional peculiarities. For instance, the sole inhabitant of these waters is a fish called the pupfish. Only this species survives in the warm, low-oxygen environment. How these fish arrived here constitutes a genuine mystery. According to scientific assumptions, this species appeared on Earth from several hundred to tens of thousands of years ago. Here's another unusual phenomenon. Water in Devil's Hole caves ripples during earthquakes across various global locations. For example, the 2011 Japanese earthquake caused intense water agitation at this location. Similar observations occurred during comparable events in China and Mexico. Devil's Kettle. Since we're discussing mysterious locations named after Satan, Devil's Kettle deserves mention. This designation applies to a location where a river divides into two directions, one flowing into a waterfall, the other into a small cavity. No one determines its destination. The water apparently vanishes. Researchers attempted investigating this using dyes and tracking balls. However, all attempts failed, producing desired results. No geological explanation exists for these occurrences. Although theories suggest water falls into underground tunnels, this remains unconfirmed. Oak Island. In 1795, young Daniel McGuinness discovered a small Nova Scotia island. Observing a strange ground depression, Daniel and his companions began excavation. Surprisingly, every 3 meters in soil contained log layers with small charcoal and putty quantities. Eventually, the pit proved so deep the company abandoned the project. Subsequently, everything continued. New individuals attempted pit excavation. They failed, achieving bottom discovery success, and everything ceased. Then new volunteers appeared again. Everything resumed. After 200 years, the bottom remains undiscovered. Even Franklin D. Roosevelt participated in 1909 excavations. However, he couldn't reach the solution either. Throughout his lifetime, he monitored island excavation progress. Across all excavation periods, approximately $10 million was expended. Searches ceased. Hope disappeared. Until 2 Michigan brothers, Rick and Marty Lagina, fascinated by the island's mystery, decided initiating excavations. Last year, they made a discovery that transformed everything. Near the swamp, they discovered Spanish coins. No one possesses the slightest understanding of their arrival. However, many now suspect genuine treasure remains buried underground. Underwater ruins off Japan. These ruins are so mysterious they lack designation. They are positioned off Yonaguni's coast. No one comprehends their formation process. Whether they represent human construction or natural formation remains unknown. Initial discovery occurred in 1995. Quite recently, though they are assumed to be at least 10,000 years old. Currently, among scientists, the most prevalent theory suggests the ruins represent ancient people's traces who lived long before our era. However, tides and sea level increases eventually transformed their home into a modern Atlantis. CIA headquarters. Among the planet's most mysterious locations isn't an ancient temple, secret fortress, or unexplained geological phenomenon. It represents the building of one of the world's most influential organizations, CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. Although the building already possesses the mysteriousness required for an intelligence organization's headquarters, something else has puzzled people for many years. Cryptus. Cryptus is an encrypted sculpture positioned in front of CIA headquarters since 1990 and remains incompletely deciphered. Of 4 messages, only 3 have been decoded. The first message states, "Between subtle shading and the absence of light lies the nuance of occlusion." The second message, "It was totally invisible." How's that possible? They used the Earth's magnetic field. Information was gathered and transmitted underground to an unknown location. Does Langley know about this? They should. Message number 3. Slowly, disparately slowly, the remains of passage debris that encumbered the lower part were removed. With trembling hands, I made a tiny breach in the upper left-hand corner. And then, widening the hole a little, I inserted the candle and peered in. The hot air escaping from the chamber caused the flame to flicker, but presently details of the room within emerged from the mist. Can you see anything? This represents the 4th message, which remains undeciphered. Therefore, you possess an opportunity for fame. Göbekli Tepe. In Turkey, a location discovered in 1963 definitively and irrevocably transformed scientists' understanding of civilization development. Göbekli Tepe represents ruins, temple fragments, and tall structures that appeared 7,000 years before the pyramids and Stonehenge. Göbekli Tepe's discovery proved that religion served as agriculture's developmental catalyst, not conversely. However, currently, these statements remain preliminary. In 20 years of archaeological work, scientists have excavated only 5% of this location. Winchester Mansion. No mysterious location catalog would be complete without Winchester House mention. Everything began with Sarah Winchester, widow and owner of 50% Winchester Arms Company stock, inherited from her deceased husband. After losing her husband and daughter, Sarah felt her family was cursed. She began seeking psychic assistance. One claimed she was haunted by spirits of all Winchester firearm victims. The only solution was constructing a house for her and the spirits. So she proceeded. In 1886, she moved to California and spent a massive inheritance portion purchasing and expanding the house. The psychic assured her that construction must not be interrupted. Otherwise, she would meet the same fate as her husband and daughter. Over the subsequent 36 years, the house underwent numerous modifications without any definite plan, until it became one of the world's most insanely complex and confusing buildings, with staircases leading nowhere, doors facing walls, and many other mysteries. Graves in Scotland. In 1836, near Edinburgh, Scotland, a cave was discovered containing 17 tiny coffins. Even more strangely, each contained a neatly dressed doll. All coffins differed from each other. No one knew who buried them, when, and most importantly, why. Suggestions exist that the dolls were part of a ritual, although others believe they were buried by some eccentric. Notably, some dolls are missing arms. To this day, no one can explain why 17 dolls are buried in a Scottish cave. Salish Sea. It's difficult to imagine anything more horrifying than a foot washed ashore by the tide. Since 2007, 15 feet have been washed ashore in Canada and Washington state. The first was discovered in August 2007 by an American girl. It was a foot in a sock and shoe. Since then, such cases have been recorded many more times. There were even forgery cases, but the real 15 cases are unmistakable. The most terrible thing is that the remaining body parts never appeared. UV 76. UV 76 is a shortwave radio station somewhere in Russia or Eastern Europe that has been broadcasting on frequency 4625 kHz since 1970. All that's transmitted on this channel is round-the-clock short buzzing, sometimes interrupted by voice messages in Russian. Currently, we know the station changed its location in 2010. No one, at least publicly, admits that the station transmits signals for spies and receives signals round the clock. Headless Valley. In 1898, 6 gold prospectors stumbled upon a canyon leading to a valley. The Indians didn't much like this place and warned that there in the quiet valley, not everything was clean. But the gold seekers didn't listen to the warnings. They were armed, they were young, strong men and weren't afraid of danger. In search of a gold vein, the people went down the canyon and disappeared. A few years later, quite by accident, other people stumbled upon their skeletons. They lay embracing rifles near washing troughs. Their heads lay separately. These were the first victims of the Headless Valley. A few years later, in 1905, a similar story happened to the McLeod brothers and their friend. Brothers William and Frank McLeod, along with Robert Weir, went down the same canyon to scout the valley and disappeared. 3 years later, their headless skeletons were discovered by a random hunter. Things, weapons, and supplies were untouched. After this incident, the quiet valley got its name, Headless Valley. In 1980, on assignment from the German magazine Der Spiegel, 3 former U.S. servicemen with experience surviving in hard-to-reach areas were hired by contract. The expedition was planned for a month, but after this time, no one returned from the valley. Eventually, an expedition of 6 people was assembled. The group leader was appointed as the famous American researcher of anomalous phenomena, Dr. Hank Mortimer. Precautions were also taken. Even the cars and yellow trailer were armored. For communication, they equipped a base camp with equipment, but nothing helped. On the evening of the first day, the operator heard terrible screams from expedition members and geologist Rio Wilson. From the rocks comes emptiness. What these words meant is unclear. When 30 minutes later a rescue helicopter landed at the scientists' camp, People found not only no researchers, but no traces of their presence at all. The last disappearance is dated 1990. The list of missing was joined by 3 students who went to the valley to uncover the mystery of the cursed place. But none of them ever returned. It's still unknown who or what kills people in the valley and why they decapitate bodies, who might need human heads and for what purpose. There's no answer to this question yet. Manchac Swamp, Louisiana, USA. If you believe ancient legends, somewhere between New Orleans and Acadiana lives a creature very reminiscent of a werewolf. Rougarou. Its peculiarity is that it doesn't transform completely like a werewolf, but seems to turn inside out, becoming a hybrid of wolf and human. According to old beliefs, Rougarou is especially numerous in Louisiana's Manchac Swamp. However, there are even stranger creatures in these parts. For example, the local ghost of the voodoo priestess Julia Brown. Rumors say this girl, even during her lifetime, was distinguished by her abilities. For example, she liked to entertain herself with various predictions of misfortune for nearby towns. Of course, some people considered her a sorceress since everything she said came true. Perhaps the most terrifying prediction of all was made already on her deathbed, when Julia, with her last breath, suddenly sang a song, or rather not a song, but a line from it. "One day I will die and take you all with me." The most terrible thing is that her words came true. After her death and funeral, a powerful hurricane struck that place, wiping 3 villages off the face of the earth, taking with it the lives of many innocent people. According to this legend, the bodies of many who died in that terrible catastrophe still lie at the bottom of the local swamp. Moreover, people say that Julia herself is often seen in that area, and from time to time female singing is heard over the swamps, allegedly the girl's ghost constantly humming that same terrible line from her death song. Okika's Well, Japan. If you love traveling the world, you've probably heard of one of Japan's oldest castles that has survived to this day. It's called Himeji and consists of 83 buildings, mostly built of wood. This complex is now very popular among tourists, and people are particularly attracted by its special history. On its territory is an old well associated with an unpleasant legend about a beautiful servant named Okiko. This girl worked for the samurai Aoya Mat Shan, who constantly tried to seduce her. Okiko refused the pompous man's advances and guarded her chastity. But the samurai didn't abandon his attempts to win the girl, and when he realized all his attempts were useless, he decided to resort to extreme measures, deception. Aoya hid one of his treasures and arranged the situation so that Okiko was blamed for the theft. In ancient Japan, such acts were severely punished. However, the samurai made the servant a special offer. She could avoid punishment only on condition that she became his mistress. But even under threat of death, the pious servant rejected this proposal. Then Aoya became incredibly angry and threw the girl into the well. According to legend, her spirit still cannot rest, forever trapped at the bottom of that old well, frightening all tourists with her loud crying. Gardner Lake, Connecticut, USA. Between the towns of Basra, Montville, and Salem lies a large lake that hides nothing other than an entire house. You'll surely be surprised to see this. Despite the fact that the reservoir got its name in honor of the family that owned it and the surrounding area, the main story concerns a man named Thomas LeCount, a grocer. It was this man who bought the house and wanted to move the building from one shore of the lake to the other. But how to do such a thing? You probably wondered about this question, like any other sensible person. However, LeCount had his own solution to this problem. He decided to wait until the water in the reservoir turned to ice, and then simply move his dwelling across its surface. In winter 1895, he began implementing his plan. First, the house was raised on runners with the help of workers. This way, they managed to move it 91 meters from its place, but suddenly the ice cracked, and the entire house fell into the water along with everything in it. It was never possible to fix the situation and return it back to the icy surface. Local fishermen later even said they allegedly heard piano sounds from under the water, as if someone was playing soulful music on the instrument. Although ghosts aren't specifically mentioned in the story, Seeing this still makes one feel very uneasy, don't you agree? Labinka, Russia. Now we'll discuss the lake in Oymyakon district in eastern Yakutia. According to legends of local residents, a certain Labinka devil lives in its waters. Everyone fears that one day he'll come out on land and start harming people. Do you think this is all fiction? Who knows? But geologist Ferdo Klebov in 1953 first wrote about this monster in these lines. The object swam in close proximity. I'm sure it was some creature resembling an animal that moved in a conditional arc. First along the lake, then straight toward us. As it approached, my body was gripped by strange numbness and I was thrown into trembling. From above, we saw only a small part of the animal's carcass. But underwater, a huge, massive body was discernible. You'll agree, not a very pleasant description. The only question is whether this is a figment of the geologist's sick imagination or everything really happened. Rupkund, Himalayas. The place we'll discuss now is often called the Skeleton Lake. Not a very pleasant name, is it? Actually, it's located in the Himalayas. Many legends are told about it. For example, at the end of the 19th century, people began saying that numerous human skeletons were found on the lake's shore. And it's true. When researchers studied this hard-to-reach place in 1942, they realized the story was quite true. The fact is that a large number of human remains were found on the shore. The next expedition went there only in 2004. They also found various household items and jewelry. Detailed analysis showed their approximate age was 500 to 800 years. These were short people. Scientists from London studied bone damage and found that the possible cause of these people's death was a powerful hailstorm. In open terrain, these people had no chance of salvation, since each hailstone was at least 7 centimeters in diameter. But which people these remains belonged to was never determined. Cameron Lake, Canada. If you're interested in history or tourism, you've probably heard at least once about such a creepy place in Canada as the lake on Vancouver Island. For a long time, all sorts of creepy rumors have been spread about it, shrouded in mystery and mysticism. The thing is that in 1968, a seaplane crashed into Cameron Lake with 4 crew members on board at the time. All people died on the spot, and their remains couldn't be found underwater for 15 years. They were discovered only in 1983. And as they say, the ghosts of the dead wandered the shores of the Canadian lake all this time, frightening local residents. Moreover, rumors say that a huge snake lives in the reservoir, which from time to time emerges from the underwater surface to take a breath of fresh air, then dives back again. Shaitan Lake, Russia. This lake, with such an unusual name, is located in the Kirov region of Russia. More precisely, in the south of the Urzem district. The unique phenomenon of this lake is drifting islands on which small trees and bushes grow. It's precisely because of this, as well as water ejections from karst wells, that the lake was nicknamed Shaitan, or simply Devil. Ancient beliefs of local residents say that an evil spirit lives in these waters, ejecting entire fountains. Moreover, people were so frightened by various legends that they even stopped fishing there. For example, geophysicist Andres Rozo once wrote in his notes about the mysterious boiling river the following lines. I observed with my own eyes how various living creatures got into the reservoir. Upon contact with water, their eyes immediately went out, and the eyeballs themselves became milky white. They all tried to get out, but their tissues quickly died off, and all creatures quickly lost their strength. Who knows? Maybe a real devil really sits in this lake? What do you think? Sandy Island. Sandy Island is a missing phantom island, approximately 95 kilometers long, located between Australia and New Caledonia in the Coral Sea. It first appeared on Google Maps in 2000, and for more than 10 years, nothing was heard about it. In 2012, a liner drifted in these waters, whose crew was very surprised by the navigation instrument readings. A huge island should have been nearby, but for many kilometers around stretched only the sea surface. Sandy immediately interested both geographers and geologists from many countries. To clarify the situation, a research vessel was sent to the known coordinates. The captain approached the place cautiously, fearing to run aground. But his fears weren't confirmed. The instruments established a depth of 1,400 meters. There really was no island. Google Earth representatives stated that an error on their part was impossible, since when compiling maps they consult with the world's largest specialists in geography. According to the head of the Australian scientific expedition, Maria Seaton, the error could have crept into the World Coastline Database, from which all major maps are compiled. When journalists decided that such a serious company as Google didn't want to admit banal digitization errors, new facts surfaced. In the Auckland Museum, a report from the British Admiralty for 1908 was found, mentioning an island spotted by sailors of a whaling vessel in 1876. When the ship's captain returned from voyage, he told of several islands, both large and small, one of which was Sandy. Archival records also report an island discovered by Captain James Cook in 1774. When it turned out that Sandy appears on almost all old maps of navigators from different countries, the version with incorrect digitization was completely excluded. It's unlikely the island was an error that cartographers blindly copied from each other. But where an entire island disappeared, only the sea knows. Red lights near Kamchatka. A report of an anomalous phenomenon was posted online by a Dutch Boeing 747 pilot who was flying on August 24, 2014, from Hong Kong to Alaska. The pilot identified himself as JPC Van Heijst. According to this Van Heijst's testimony, approximately 5 hours into the flight, from an altitude of more than 10,000 meters, he noticed something in the ocean that he had never seen in all his flying practice. Straight ahead towards south of Kamchatka, a red glow flashed on the horizon. It resembled lightning discharges, but was directed vertically upward. Moreover, no clouds were observed along the route. The pilot managed to take several photos when the plane approached the anomaly site, and it became noticeable that the glow, becoming more intense, came from some bright spots in the ocean and lit up the sky, coloring it orange, which sharply transitioned to the green color of the northern lights. The crew immediately reported their observations to the dispatcher, who confirmed that the lights were noticed from other aircraft. Currently, specialists are trying to understand what this phenomenon was. An investigation is being conducted, but there are no results yet. The only reasonable assumption is that from the aircraft, the pilots saw an underwater volcanic eruption and lava spots spread underwater were glowing. Incidentally, during the flight, the crew received warnings about earthquakes in Iceland, Chile, and San Francisco. But there were no reports of any cataclysms on the route. The nature of this phenomenon hasn't been solved yet, but according to a candidate of geological and mineralogical sciences, there's no volcanism in this zone. He says, in terms of volcanism, this is a quiet area, so this beauty has nothing to do with volcanoes. The scientists noted that in the photographs taken by the pilot, many glowing objects can be distinguished. I don't know if they're using powerful lights for sorry fishing like before. If they are, then one could assume this is a large concentration of fishing vessels on sorry fishing. Although, to be honest, it sounds like nonsense. Monte Cristo Homestead. Among the most terrifying locations stands Monte Cristo Homestead in Australia. Construction occurred in 1885. Despite its nomenclature, the homestead bears no connection to Dumas's literary character. Indeed, Monte Cristo translates as Mount of Christ. However, this designation failed to deliver fortune to the homestead's proprietors. This residence belonged to the Crawley family and acquired its malevolent reputation almost immediately following construction completion. Sequentially, under enigmatic circumstances, individuals began perishing within the house. The initial casualty of the murderous dwelling was the owner's infant daughter. A servant was transporting the small child to her parents, but upon ascending the staircase, the girl was apparently seized from her arms by some unidentified force. Additionally residing in the homestead was the house manager's mentally disturbed son. Harold was restrained in chains and confined within one of the auxiliary buildings to prevent harm to others. However, one day he succeeded in escaping, following which his mother was discovered deceased. Harold himself was committed to an asylum. Even after the young man's death, the horrific events in the homestead persisted. The house was placed under supervision, but one of the caretakers was found dead in that same outbuilding where Harold had been previously confined. The Ancient Ram Inn. The malevolent reputation of the Ancient Ram Inn in Great Britain has generated considerable revenue for its proprietors. Although currently accommodation is impossible, this location enjoys tremendous popularity among tourists. Many purchase tickets granting the privilege to spend several hours in this terrifying location. Typically, adventure seekers select nighttime periods. What attracts enthusiasts of extreme experiences? Many regard this location as a conduit for paranormal activity. Satanists previously conducted their occult rituals and sacrificial ceremonies here, leading to beliefs that spirits of murdered individuals roam throughout the inn. Visitors detect screams from vacant rooms and experience sensations of being grasped. Simply stated, no haunted house compares to this location. One tourist who ventured to visit the Ancient Ram Inn was so terrified by an inexplicable scream that he even leaped from the window. Nevertheless, tickets for nighttime visits continue selling out. Akershus Fortress. Among Norway's capital's beautiful attractions stands Akershus Fortress, which established the foundation for Oslo city's construction. Currently, a museum operates here, and tourists enthusiastically visit this location. An orchestra performs below. Important receptions frequently occur here, and visitors might believe they've entered a fairy tale. However, learning this fortress's history instantly transforms the fairy tale into a horror story. During the 18th century's conclusion, a royal prison operated here. Numerous prisoners, sentenced for various crimes, concluded their lives within these walls. Many perished from torture, but this isn't the most terrible aspect of Akershus's history. During World War II, the fortress was surrendered to Germans without resistance, and the Gestapo established operations there. Souls of individuals tortured by Germans join prisoner spirits and possibly wander within this fortress's walls. Banff Springs Hotel. Banff Springs represents a hotel of extraordinary beauty positioned in Western Canada within an extremely scenic location. The building's interior is simply luxurious. However, the extensive, winding corridors occasionally resemble labyrinths from which escape proves difficult. Should you traverse such an extended and shadowy corridor, you might suddenly hear screams that guests periodically experience. This hotel definitely won't provide a peaceful rest location. Numerous legends circulate regarding the hotel. For instance, the Forgotten Room 873. On the 8th floor, following room 872 comes room 874. Initially, they discovered a relatively simple explanation for this. The builders forgot installing windows and doors in one room. Therefore, the room remained vacant and unused. However, guests constantly complained about screams emanating from the empty room. Subsequently, they installed a door and windows in the room and began renting it. Almost immediately, a horrific murder occurred in room 873. A father killed his own daughter. The room was again removed from rental, but individuals staying in adjacent rooms continue hearing strange screams to this day. Castle of Good Hope. Another location inhabited by spirits became the Castle of Good Hope in South Africa. Construction occurred in 1666 by Dutch colonizers. Perhaps the 3 sixes in the construction year influenced events. Alternatively, perhaps another reason existed. However, paranormal phenomena were consistently observed in the castle. The first strange incident was the inexplicable Bible movement. Mentions of this appear in manuscripts. 200 years later, the ghost of a woman in gray dress began appearing in the castle, manifesting and vanishing suddenly. Near the castle stood the governor's residence. The buildings were connected by an underground tunnel. However, it was sealed as unnecessary. But this didn't become an obstacle for the ghost. Once, Governor Barter Pryor's wife observed a mysterious hooded woman in her house. However, the most interesting story connects with one governor's ghost, Peter Van Noot, who was famous for his harsh character. He was discovered dead in his office on the exact day when, by his order, 7 soldiers were executed for desertion. His face expressed incredible terror. Since then, the governor's ghost began appearing in the castle. Torre de Cusio. A massive colonial mansion in Mexico's capital center, Torre de Cosio, is also considered a very ominous location. The situation involves Juan de Solorzano living here in the 17th century. A complete series of murders weighs on this man's conscience. The man was a pathological jealous individual and perceived his wife's lover in every passerby. He wandered around the house and asked passersby the identical question, "What time is it?" In his opinion, by answering this question, the lover should have revealed himself. However, the paradox was that Juan considered any answer proof of guilt. Both those who answered the question and those who couldn't provide an answer faced the same fate. The jealous man stabbed them with a knife. In our time, there's a legend about the ghost of a man in 17th century costume who still walks around the mansion and asks passersby for the time. Lemp Mansion. Among America's most visited haunted houses is rightfully considered the mansion in St. Louis that belonged to the Lemp family. A special family beer recipe allowed the Lemps to accumulate wealth. They were even called beer barons. However, money didn't bring them happiness. Conversely, the family's terrible history convinced many that a family curse was involved. Everything began with the death of the main heir of the brewing company, Frederick Lemp, whose death cause hasn't been definitively established to this day. The family head allegedly couldn't survive his beloved son's death and shot himself in the head. Following this incident, deaths and suicides occurred sequentially. Later, they attempted converting their mansion into a restaurant, then a hotel, but both visitors and owners began frequently noticing ghosts wandering through the house. Now the Lemp Mansion is visited by tourists as an attraction with an interesting history shrouded in mysticism. Berengaria Hotel. Berengaria Hotel was once Cyprus's most luxurious. Titled individuals often stayed here. However, today it's difficult to believe this, observing the abandoned, half-ruined building whose walls are covered with various inscriptions. How could such a luxurious hotel be allowed to deteriorate into such neglected condition? The situation involves Berengaria, or rather what remains of it, representing a genuine monument to human stupidity. The hotel owner had 3 sons who, following their father's death, couldn't divide the hotel's profits. The brothers were excessively engrossed in disputes. Consequently, essentially no one was managing the hotel's affairs, and Berengaria was abandoned. However, what makes this story truly terrifying is the mysterious death of all 3 brothers, whose causes haven't been established to this day. Local residents claim that the hotel owner's ghosts still wander among the ruins. Glamis Castle. Another haven for ghosts is Glamis Castle in Scotland. This building with beautiful architecture is shrouded in numerous myths. There's a belief that the ghost of Earl Bairdie lives in the castle, who during his lifetime became a great lover of card games and didn't lose his passion after death. They say that every night the Earl is joined by the devil himself, and they allegedly play cards until dawn. Flight 19. Perhaps among the most controversial and mystical events connected with the Bermuda Triangle occurred on December 5, 1945. On that day, a flight of 5 Avenger torpedo bombers departed from the Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale. They were supposed to perform a routine training flight. At 14:10 local time, the torpedo bombers left the base. An hour and a half after the flight began, the airbase intercepted radio communications in which pilots from the squadron anxiously discussed that navigation instruments had failed and compasses were spinning. The flight was lost. Base Command immediately dispatched 2 rescue Mariner seaplanes to the area of supposed landing of Flight 19, but along different routes. One of them, after reporting that it was arriving in the area of the missing torpedo bomber's bearing, suddenly disappeared from radio contact. Connection with it was never reestablished. At 21:20 local time, the captain of one of the oil tankers in the Bermuda Triangle area sent a message to the Coast Guard that he observed an explosion in the sky, which later left an oil slick on the water. Under the explosion site, the tanker crew discovered nothing. Base headquarters ordered the second Mariner to fly to the coordinates of the oil slick indicated by the tanker sailors to attempt finding wreckage of the rescue aircraft. When Aircraft 32 Mariner arrived at the location, it couldn't locate either wreckage or the oil slick itself on the water. If something was there, it vanished without trace. Further searches for Flight 19 also brought no success. Ground searches were conducted with volunteer teams who were supposed to look for aircraft wreckage washed ashore. Everything was fruitless. People couldn't discover anything that would indicate the fate of Flight 19 and the rescue aircraft. Flores hobbits. As is known, remains of Flores man were discovered in 2003 on the island of Flores. They were so small that they were even called hobbits. This raises the question, were these remains of an unknown branch of early humans, or conversely, modern humans affected by some disease? The fact is that their height was just over a meter, and their brain was 3 times smaller than that of an ordinary person. Nevertheless, these hobbits consumed meat, using stone tools that they manufactured themselves. However, their origin is still a great mystery, as is their entire fate. Therefore, scientists still have a lot of work ahead to learn exactly how to fit these hobbits into the evolutionary genealogical tree, and also why they disappeared from the face of the earth. Possessive Nessie, Magnetic Island. In 2013, near the coastal territory, people noticed a strange creature resembling some large monster. Some locals even thought it was the real Loch Ness Monster. However, the author of the footage called it differently, Possessive Nessie. To this day, no one can explain what it was. However, there's one more or less rational explanation that sounds like this. These are the remains of a dragon boat that sank somewhere near the indicated place at that time. However, due to the lack of evidence for this theory, people prefer to believe that this is no different from the Loch Ness Monster that moved to warmer waters. Time travel Tenerife. Tenerife Island, one of whose gorges is Barranco Badajoz. It was there that several Guanche mummies were discovered. Therefore, as you understand, this place attracts many researchers. But the island isn't interesting only for this, because this place is truly paranormally active. Those who have been to this gorge often say that upon entering it, time seems to stop. This is in the literal sense. Some people even saw strange lights that flashed over it from time to time. There were even those who told about some creatures resembling angels in white robes. But one story was remembered most of all, about a girl who once entered the gorge and dissolved in it for a whole 20 years, after which she returned. But she looked as if she had never disappeared and hadn't even aged. But that's all for today. Don't forget to rate the video and, of course, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for your attention and goodbye.